healthcare, food, living spaces, transportation, cities, enterprises, energy, and digital trust. We believe technology is forging a brighter future.
His Excellency Senior Minister of State Dr. Janil Thakiri, Singtel Group CEO, Moon, Axiata Group CEO, Dr. Hans, lovely to see you, Selena from ITU, fantastic and great to speak to you this morning. So many senior guests and speakers today, welcome and welcome to you all in the audience. I would like to thank you for joining us today. This is the first time we've held a GSMA APAC M360 in Singapore, and it's called about Building of Digital Nations. The GSMA hosts the world's largest telecoms events around the world and some of the most beautiful cities in the world. And I know this morning when I got up and went for the jog, for the networking jog, which hopefully a few of you get to see the pictures of, is without a doubt that Singapore is an outstanding addition to our portfolio. At the GSMA, our annual Digital Societies report, which has been tracking development and championing the path to inclusive digital societies for 5 years. Today, we have published the 2022 edition, and it finds that the world has moved into a new era, really, a new phase of digital transformation. And that's a world where our concept of a nation is changing, where a nation is not defined by a line in the sand, and where our foundations of trust and identity are not from centralized institutions or physical presence, and where the dynamics of our work, our home, our community and culture are being altered by digital. An era where we must examine our path to a future of sustainable digital nations. Against this backdrop, I trust you will find the next 2 days a packed agenda, interesting, stimulating and inspiring as this amazing city. So before we start, I would like to thank our major partners, the IMBA, Singtel, Born to Global, Huawei, and the Global Telecoms Women's Network, and the Singapore Tourist Board for their support and helping make this event possible, and to Singapore for hosting such a wonderful event. I would like to now invite His Excellency, Senior Minister of State for Ministry of Communication and Information and also the Ministry of Health, Excellency Dr. Janil, to the stage to open the Building Digital Nations APAC M360 with his keynote. Thank you, Dr.
Good morning, everybody. It's really my pleasure to start the discussions on building digital nations. COVID-19 has accelerated digital adoption across the world. Emerging technologies and their applications are improving lives and livelihoods, but they bring with them attendant challenges. Governments and industry increasingly need to work together to maximize the benefits as well as concurrently manage the risks of digitalization, all of which, the benefits and the risks as well as our interventions, transcend geographical boundaries. Mobile 360 Asia Pacific is an important event. It continues to bring together public and private sector leaders within the digital domain across nations, presenting a valuable platform to driving learning, driving collaboration. For Singapore, we want two major outcomes for our digital future. First, we have to maximize the benefits of digitalization, allowing our enterprise to use technology to grow, to seize new opportunities, and to create more good jobs for our workforce. We need for our people to participate meaningfully in the digital society. And secondly, we need to find ways to manage the challenges and risks of digitalization. Online safety, cybersecurity, data protection, the system integrity needs to be upheld. This is vital because it preserves trust, and trust is the bedrock of our digital future. And only with that sense of trust do people have that confidence to transact digitally, to engage in that ecosystem, and drive the kind of enterprise innovation to develop the ecosystem even further. Achieving this, multifaceted interventions are needed, and multiple stakeholders across different domains. First, for us, we need to make early investments to ensure the continued relevance of our underlying digital infrastructure. This forms the bedrock, the basis of innovative solutions that we need to develop and deliver and deploy. 5G is a case in point. Our rollout of our standalone networks is on track, and at the same time we're working with various enterprises, many of whom are represented in this room, to develop and scale up 5G use cases. One example is APAC's first holomedicine project by the National University Health System. It employs mixed reality for enhanced clinical care. My job here is just to provide the trailer, a teaser. NUHS and partners will be sharing more about this in a separate session tomorrow. Please make sure you turn up for that. Looking even further ahead, Singapore recognizes the need to drive research in digital technologies that have a transformative potential. We're investing 25 billion Singapore dollars in our Research, Innovation and Enterprise 2025 plan. This focuses on driving translation of technology and strengthening the innovation capabilities of our enterprises. One subgroup, one example within this is our investment of close to $70 million in the Future Communications R&D program. Through industry collaborations and technical trials, the program allows us to better understand, develop capability, and reap the benefits, we hope, of technologies such as the open radio access networks. We've also recently announced a $50 million investment in Digital Trust Center to drive research and innovation in trust technologies, which, as I've highlighted, are key to many of our ambitions within the digital space. As we enhance our infrastructure and our research capabilities, we also need, in parallel, to review our regulatory frameworks, and doing this in a consultative and collaborative manner to keep pace with technological advancements. This includes learning from international partners, engaging the industry to understand tech trends and business models, and understanding our people's needs. This approach, which we hope is balanced between our digital infrastructure development and our focus on economic growth and innovation, while maintaining social stability, digital security, and environmental sustainability, we hope will take us forward in a way that brings everyone with us. Our next area of focus is building digital capabilities so that our enterprises and our workforce can maximize their opportunities within the digital economy. We have been and will continue to support small and medium enterprises in their digital transformation to boost their productivity and their competitiveness and help Singaporean businesses access new markets. One example is our program where we offer a Chief Technology Officer as a service. This initiative provides SMEs access to digital solutions appropriate for their business needs and consultancy services to empower them in raising their digital maturity. Key to many of our ambitions is our human capability development, and we have been working with industry and educational institutions to nurture a pipeline of local tech talent equipped to access employment opportunities in new areas, and ensuring that the skills of our existing ICT workforce remain relevant amid very rapid changes. We've had academies such as our 5G Academy, upskilling people within the workforce, thousands of them, so that their roles can be applied to higher value jobs. Lastly, and just as importantly, we're deepening collaborations with other governments and industry partners globally and regionally. We deeply understand that a global digital framework that is interoperable, resilient, and secure, doing all this across borders, is in our interests, just as it is in the interests of international partners. It will facilitate cross-border innovation in emerging technologies and applications. And in achieving this, we have to work bilaterally with certain countries, as through our digital economy agreements, for example, as well as regionally and multilaterally using platforms such as ASEAN. I hope this very rapid sketch gives you some sense of how we are approaching the ideas and challenges to build a digital nation here in Singapore. Each of these ideas I think we could spend some time talking about, but I'm looking forward to our fireside chat and the questions that we may have to explore some of these key ideas. With that, I wish you a wonderful event, and thank you very much for taking the time and trouble to travel here to Singapore and join us on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Janil. I'll ask you to take a seat here, and I would like to ask you to take a seat there. Just like to ask to invite to the stage Sulina Abdullah from the ITU to join the Honourable Minister here. Selina is Chief of Digital Knowledge Hub at the ITU, based in Geneva, so she travelled all the way from Geneva, and, but a regional resident, and great to see you back in the region. And we had a great conversation this morning, so I know this is going to be a great chat. So, I suppose, if I start with Dr. Janil. GSMA is honoured and proud to be part and actually hold this event now in Singapore, host country for our Building Digital Nations conference. How has digital technology and the government policies enabled Singapore to welcome international travellers from more than 40 countries to this event? How do you see it evolving over the next couple of years as we emerge from COVID?
Well, quite a lot of our COVID response was built on the digital technology that we already had. We weren't scrambling to build stuff anew. We were scrambling to build stuff using the tools and technologies and platforms that we already had. And I think the approach that we took, it continues to be relevant whether you have COVID or not. And I hope that that approach has created the kind of confidence in our COVID posture which has enabled you to travel here today. The first basis is to invest ahead and invest early in key infrastructure. So whether it's about how our Trace Together token worked, or the home-based learning worked, or the various handshakes between the COVID certificates that we have, our early investments in connectivity, these were all things we did decades before and were essential to our COVID response. The push that we had made around what we would see as digital utilities, whether it's payment, invoicing, identity attestation. All of that was in place prior to COVID. It had an acceleration through COVID. And again, it's allowed many of the platforms that I think we use to give that confidence to travel to and travel within Singapore. But one of the key things was then to create the space for innovation. And I think the ability for our enterprises to innovate has likewise then created that both COVID-19 response, the business response to COVID-19, not the public health response. And I think that's a key part of then the confidence that we have here. All of that, we hope, means that people have lots of opportunities, and they've been seeking out these opportunities, creating opportunities like this conference. I'm very glad you decided to do this, in person. I think of all the conferences we've had, given your, roles around connectivity, this would be a great advert to do it online. But there's nothing like getting together in person. So we've done all that, but the government posture at the heart of it is to use technology in a way that reinvents ourselves on a regular basis. Both as a nation, we've been doing this for 57 years. We're a small country, zero-sum around factors of production, whether it's land, manpower, water, energy, increasingly carbon. And so the idea of a forced reinvention is something that we've institutionalized every few years. And the last 2 or 3 cycles have been based around the technologies that we would now call ICT and digital. And that applies to us within government as well. We need to be the kind of regulator that is informed both by our facility with the technology as well as the international partnerships that we share, and do that to make sure that our policies adapt in real time. So putting that all together, I hope you get a sense then of how we're trying to build that confidence in Singapore.
Oh, well, certainly. I mean, it's been about 5 years since I was a resident in Singapore, and most of that interrupted by the virus. It's been great to come back and great to be part of this. So then I'm going to move on to Selena. Most of us here are aware of 5G, and we're looking to hear a lot about how 5G works in Singapore, and 5G is happening around the world. But you're here to talk about G5. Maybe you could explain something about that.
Before we get to G5, I just wanted to comment a little bit about what Dr. Jano was saying. I was resident in Singapore during the COVID, having been in the private sector for a very short time. And I must say that my family and I found it a privilege to have lived in Singapore because we thought that the government handled it very well. And because of my background, I was a regulator back in Malaysia. I took an interest in what you were doing. I think you mentioned connectivity and you mentioned partnerships, 2 things. And these are 2 things that even at the ITU, we feel are prerequisites moving forward in building a digital nation. And there'll be more of that. But back to G5. So it's not 5G, Julian, it's G5. But make no mistake, now we didn't do this on purpose to confuse people. So the ITU has been investing for the past 20 years in developing tools to track the development of regulatory progress across the world in the 193 member states of the ITU. And so it starts obviously from G1, and from G1 all the way to G4, it's been about telecommunications, and then it evolved to ICT. So when you get to G5, it's really no more sector-specific. We're looking at cross-sector collaboration and digital regulation, if you'd like. And so the gold standard for us is G5. Of course, each of these generations, as you progress, it becomes more sophisticated. So that's where we are. And the gold standard is cross-sector collaboration, cross-border engagement, and it's just across the board. So it's all this, because today, the ITU considers, and GSMA as well, we've been singing the same tune for a long time, GSMA and us. We consider that it's really no longer viable for policy and regulation to be developed without stakeholder consultation, stakeholder involvement. And Singapore is one of these models, I think. Back in the day, many of the ASEAN member states were doing the same thing, and I think now across Asia Pacific that's happening. So how can APEC countries transition to a more collaborative framework? First of all, you need political will. You have to get your institutional arrangements right. You have to look at the directions, the strategies, the financing, and then you look at your hardcore black letter of the law, your regulation, your policies, And that's not enough. You then have to transition and look at your sectoral arrangements and make sure that you have formal, informal, hybrid mechanisms for cross-sector collaboration. And those are just 3 pillars in what the ITU Telecommunication Development Bureau talks about in terms of our digital transformation wheel. I think that's really important. Now, every country in the world is on the G5 spectrum. So you're either a leading country, a transitioning, leading, advanced, transitioning, and limited. So in Asia Pacific, the 3 countries who are in the leading sphere are Australia, Republic of Korea, and Singapore. And I have to look at my list for the 10. I'd like to give you that list. And unlike Dr. Janil, I can't remember everything, you know. He's very good at that, except that he wore a tie. See, Julian and I are not wearing ties today, and he said he would lose the tie, but he has.
I'm just following instructions.
So the 10 countries who are in the advanced sphere for G5, who are from the Asia-Pacific region, are China, India, Indonesia, Japan, Malaysia, New Zealand, Pakistan, Philippines, Sri Lanka, and Thailand. And I hope I answered your question. And that's the difference. So G5, not 5G, it's regulation.
Yes. So for those people, we're much better around the G5 now. And actually, then I'm going to turn it to Dr. Janil then. Sunny mentioned that Singapore is one of those 3 with a top G5 measure. Amongst, in the GSMA report, our Digital Societies report, we also measure Singapore as like one of the most advanced in the regions. I suppose we've heard your statement earlier about a very advanced engagement with the ecosystem and driving it forward. I suppose how do you think Singapore can ensure that it continues to thrive as a digital nation and continues to be able to reinvent? And what would be the lessons for other countries in the region?
No, indeed. It's that every time we're doing that reinvention, every time we are reconsidering ourselves in that framework of what we can, it has to be what can we do next? What can we do in the future? So let's take the component of digital infrastructure. We've got to have high-speed broadband. We've got to have high-speed digital connectivity. We're rolling out 5G and nearly completed one of the networks, recent announcement. But as we do that, we have to then actively think of what is the next step, what is the next bound. Yeah. So developing the use cases. So the grants that we've put in place for industry to then help those new types of industries and new business models ride on this new infrastructure is an active process that we have to engage with. So active development of the key digital infrastructure. Then when it comes to the layer of digital utilities, what we would see is things that need to become almost digital public goods. And I talked a little bit about payment identity, attestation, data exchange, industry-specific data exchange. Again, a proactive approach to drive the standards, drive the interoperability, and update the regulatory space so that the industry partners within, for example, our SG TradeX, which is for the supply chain ecosystem. It's not going to happen by chance, and we have to get in there in partnership with international regulators, in partnership with industry, and create those kinds of platform for the next set of opportunities. And then recognizing that importance of human potential. We've got to, again, invest ahead. So quantum engineering, for example, we have a fair amount of effort trying to create the human capability through a research program, through grants around developing specific personnel, but also to drive the use case, our quantum safe networks that we're putting up as test beds, so that these hardcore engineers that are developing the tech here in Singapore have a use case here in Singapore to apply themselves to, that next bound of technology. It may or may not be the right bet. We think it is the right bet, but it is about creating the kind of environment where our people and the enterprises are confident that they're at the cutting edge. Attracting talent, attracting opportunity, attracting ideas. And then right in the background, this sense of trust and confidence, focusing on cybersecurity, online safety, and data privacy. That we have to continually work at that. And I think a marker of the success that we've had in the policy space around that is when it fades into the background and people just assume that this is the work that we're going to do, as opposed to a brand new project or a brand new initiative. So that's kind of how we're trying to put everything together. And I would just give one further example of what I hope is a marker of where we've come from. We started this Smart Nation initiative in 2014. We branded this effort around tech-driven transformation. It was a national thing. Our Prime Minister stood up and talked about it. We had programs, banners, taglines, logos, all of which are still current and valid. But if you look at our latest exercise that DPM Lawrence Wong is launching around our reinvention, it's called Forward Singapore. And if you look carefully in the fine print, you might or you might not see Smart Nation and tech in there. And that's not an accident. It's because it's now assumed that tech and digital transformation is going to be applied to every aspect of that next exercise around reimagining our social compact. And I think that's a marker of the success that we've had over the last 6 years of pulling these different pieces together. And I think that's how we have to take it forward into the policy space.
Okay. I think it's a great description of the big universe that you need to bring together to drive a digital nation forward. But I suppose if I switch it to Selena, at the basic end for a customer, you know, ITU talks about universal, meaningful connectivity.
Yes.
Maybe explain, like, how do you map from big universe of driving a nation forward down to universal, meaningful connectivity?
Well, thank you for that question, Julian. As Dr. Daniel was saying, I'm really going to quote you today, Daniel. Yeah. It's all about connectivity, and you were right. See, for us at the ITU, we look at the lowest common denominator. So there are countries like Singapore and Australia and Republic of Korea who are far ahead. But there are also other countries who have not yet come into that sphere, and they're still at the limited stage of G5. And so we look at connectivity. But today, to us at the ITU, and we've been working with, as you said, the UN Secretary General's Office of the Technology Envoy, that's very long, together with partners like GSMA, to come up with the concept of universal and meaningful connectivity. So universality is what it is, coverage. Today, only 5% of the world's population is not covered by a 3G signal. There's 95% coverage, and yet there's still a 30-odd percentage gap of population who are not taking access. But when you talk about connectivity, here in this room, we take it for granted. We whip out our phones, our multiple devices, iPad, what have you, and we take it for granted that we can use this device anytime we want for whatever reason we need to. 4.9 billion people in the world are connected today, but many hundreds of millions of those people cannot do that. And so what we are advocating is that they need to have meaningful connectivity, otherwise it's not going to have a positive impact on them, whether it's economic or social. And so that's really the concept of meaningful connectivity, universal and meaningful connectivity. So we have 15 targets for that, which we launched in New York in April this year. And we feel that through these targets, countries and governments will be able to have a good reflection and indication of whether you are in that stage of what we call in very short form UMC, or Universal Meaningful Connectivity. These targets are meant to promote universal and meaningful connectivity across, globally, regionally, and really in the nation. And it's meant to promote this and to help you put this into your digital strategies at national level. And lastly, it's supposed to help you also make decisions based on evidence. So it's evidence-based, it's data-based. That's what it is, really.
Yeah.
So,
can I just follow up on that?
you're not supposed to ask me questions. But
Seeing as you're quoting me, you know, that's political achievement number one. You know, get quoted in the media if possible.
I will call you for dinner tonight.
Take credit for something. But just building on that, you know, we talk about the digital infrastructure, the utilities, the standards that we're setting, the international cooperation. But for a government, we have to find a way to translate all that into a lived experience for our people.
Correct.
Right? Get people connected and then have them have a fulfilling experience online. So that trust and confidence that we're talking about has to translate into an outcome that, jobs, but a lived experience where they feel that they're part of this digital society, they're digitally included. So I think that's where it's got to come down to, and that's where we have a marker of success and a sort of forward agenda.
We're going to ask you to expand on that in relation to, Singapore sits in a very large region surrounded by a number of different countries, different maturities. Selena mentioned in the G5 rankings there's difference. Singapore's growth must be at some point dependent on what is in the region. So how do you see in the Forward Singapore plan, like what is the role in collaboration with the countries around and in the region? How do you make sure that they're pushing forward in a way that can also help Singapore move forward?
No, absolutely. So that issue of what we do across borders is both on the positive agenda in terms of the development of our economy. So Singapore's economy has always been plugged into a region much larger than our borders. And we are dependent on international trade historically as an entrepot. But there's a defensive side of it as well. The interoperability, security, and resilience for us as a nation also then rely on what we do across borders. And so both the positive agenda as well as the sort of defensive protective agenda requires that international collaboration, and it requires the collaboration and engagement with the private sector. All of which requires a certain approach to being open to ideas and then that adaptability going forward. But doing this in terms of practical instruments, I think we can't constrain ourselves too much. And Singapore, we engage both on a bilateral basis, so we have our digital economy agreements with a number of countries, sort of adapting the old school free trade agreements for a digital era. But we also have multilateral platforms which we have to take full use of, and we hope to bring a number of partners. So ASEAN is one we talked about, the things that are happening at the United Nations, our role in the open-ended working group on cybersecurity, the group of governmental experts on cybersecurity. So we need to do all of these things. Engage industry. So for example, the collaboration that we had on AI Verify, which is an AI governance toolkit and framework, and that was developed very much in tight collaboration and cooperation with industry. Engage international partners that are ready to move early, so our digital economy agreement partners that have decided to move quickly, and work on multilateral platforms, what we've done at ASEAN, what we've done at the United Nations. All of which we know is not just something that we're doing idealistically. It's in our interest to do so, and it's in our interest to persuade people that this is the way we should take things forward.
Okay. Well, thank
Julian, I'm going to interject. Since you interjected,
Go for it.
I'll tell you. Yeah. So here I have 700.
This is the regulator interrupting government.
Well, I have
so life is normal.
720. Life is normal. Yeah, okay. Here, I don't know how many people there are. I reckon there are about 728 people here. So I have a witness. You said that you are partners with ITU. So I would like to challenge Singapore.
So,
challenge accepted. You want to tell me what the challenge is?
Okay. So we have a program that we launched at the World Telecommunication Development Conference in Kigali in June. And it's called Partner to Connect Digital Coalition. And that's where it was the UN's first ever pledging conference on connectivity. And so, well, you pledge, we work together. We had, at the end of the conference, we had 26.5, I think these were $5 billion US worth of pledges, but Singapore was not in it.
Ooh, on stage.
So if you're free on Thursday morning, I'll come see you for 15 minutes and let's talk about this pledge. You're not free, right?
Listen, if we can settle it in 15 minutes, we would have settled it already. You know, I think you put aside an hour and we'll have a chit chat about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to mention that it'd be great because you're talking about partnership. It's very jarring not to have Singapore pledge in this program. So I'd like to do that. And sorry, I cut in on that.
No, I think that guarantees that this conversation is going to carry on beyond our little fireside chat here. But maybe if it's closing, then it's been a fantastic kickoff to our event. It said a lot of describe the ecosystem and things, and a lot of the topics that we're going to cover in the next 2 days. But maybe as a closing to wrap up, ask both of you, what are the couple of priorities you think we should be talking about?
Me first.
And people should be debating over the next 2 days? As we go through the conference and maybe in the future. So
thank you, me first, because Dr. Jan is going to steal everything. So first of all, digital nation is not quite a term that we use in the ITU, but going in the general order of things, I think your priorities could be, first you have to know where you are, and data is everything. And nowadays, you need to invest in gathering data because we are collecting data to measure very different things. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to build your conducive environment because your policy and regulatory framework is your trigger to everything. And then your foundations. You mentioned infrastructure. So yes, it's infrastructure, it's connectivity, it's universal and meaningful connectivity. And then it's people. You said skills, digital skills, upskilling. So it's upskilling up, and up. It's anticipating future skills. It's looking at marginalized communities. And finally, it's for me, it's partnership.
Oh, yeah, no, totally. This is like a media ambush.
I tell you.
Very.
You'll never speak with me again, but it's okay.
Yeah, what she said, but I'm going to say it in a different order.
Okay.
Because I think it's how we think about it. I think we would have the same priorities and the same ideas. But from a government perspective, the order in which you get things done, I think, is slightly different. Because we would say, look, you have to have the infrastructure first. And that's the thing that you've got to invest in well ahead of time. You have to create the kind of environment where you engineer the digital utilities and create space for the private sector to innovate above and on the platforms, using the infrastructure that you've invested ahead of time in. Then you've got to spare no effort in developing human capability. I mean, whatever it is you can do to, whether it's the undergraduate space, whether it's the postgraduate space, adult learning, but that sense of creating human capability and human talent has to come, but you can only do that if the correct conditions for that talent to be applied are already there. Then, when all that is in place, you have the opportunity for businesses to thrive and take advantage of the conditions, the workforce, the innovation, the support for innovation that you have there. So partnerships with industry, partnerships to develop technology, develop ideas, and improve your regulatory space. And then you have a credible voice on the international stage. You have the opportunity to drive international collaboration, engage with people on how we set standards, how we set norms, create opportunities. And then you circle all the way back and say, what are we doing all of this for? It has to be about better lives for our people, whether it's jobs, whether it's inclusion, whether it's a sense of social participation in this digital nation. And so that's basically what she said, but I'm taking it in another order. And I think we're on the same page.
Yeah, we are.
We're on the same page, yeah.
Well, I think that's a great wrap-up and a great prescription that at the end of tomorrow we'll be able to measure ourselves by how far have we moved down that path. So I'd like to thank you both, His Excellency Dr. Janelle, Selina.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for this fireside chat and opening today's conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
So it's just been just over 3 years ago since South Korea was home to the simultaneous launch of 5G across its 3 national networks, marking the start of really the 5G era. And so in a year where we expect 1 billion 5G users globally, I would like to invite to the stage Mr. Sang-Hoon Song, Director General, ICT Industry Policy Bureau from the Ministry of Science and ICT, Korea, to provide his keynote. Just as he walks the stage, before his current role, Dr. Sang-Hoon Song has held a number of roles in the ministry, including Director General, Investigation and Coordination, Personal Information Protection Commission, and Director of the Network Policy Commission. So thank you.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Sang-Hoon Song, Director General at the Ministry of Science and ICT in Korea. First of all, I'd like to thank GSMA and Bond Global Center officials who invited me to the GSMA Mobile 360 Asia Pacific 2022. Today, in this presentation, I'm going to talk about the establishment of a digital nation in Korea. The economically active population of Korea is projected to decrease rapidly due to the low birth rate and aging population. It will be 2.33 billion persons in 2030, less than what it is now. In order to cope with the labor shortage caused by this and the demands of the fourth industrial revolution, establishing a digital nation is an essential task. Korea has been making many efforts to build a digital nation by establishing plans to deal with the fourth industrial revolution in 2017 and declared the switch to a data economy in 2018. So we have achieved various successful outcomes. First, we advanced core infrastructures by launching commercial 5G for the world's first time, establishing a national strategy for AI, and enacting the Framework Act on Data. Based on these preparations, we achieved great results. Let's now take a look at these results in more detail. The Korean government has been striving to advance core infrastructure to prepare the groundwork to become a digital leading country. First, we aim to secure 1,300 types of data for training AI and 31 big data platforms by 2025 through a large-scale project. Second, we aim to construct an AI-based intelligent government by providing public service using private messenger and switching some of the government system to private cloud. Strengthening of nationwide support using ICT technology has improved access to public services. Guppi, an AI public secretary, provides people with preemptive notification service for health checkup, tax payment, and counseling service for welfare and loan. In addition, the Korean government tried to overcome the national crisis by quickly constructing a private cloud-based COVID-19 vaccine reservation system. Data infrastructure are used in all areas, including the service and manufacturing industry, such as medical services, and also have led innovation. Samsung Medical Center and LG Smart Park are typical examples. Samsung Medical Center obtained Stage 7 in 2022, the highest IT infrastructure certificate level of HIMSS. LG Smart Park was selected as a lighthouse factory announced by the World Economic Forum. 5G convergence services laid by 3 mobile carriers, that is KT, SKT, and LDU Plus, are quickly emerging. First, as for SK Telecom, it launched a 5G-based metaverse platform specialized for meetings and communication. An enterprise 5G network was built on all factories of SK Hynix chipmaker. KT has commercialized 5G-based remote work services. In addition, they built a smart factory at Hyundai Heavy Industries. LDU Plus is also releasing a variety of 5G-based immersive content. In June of last year, the KLPGA competition was broadcast live based on 5G. Meanwhile, a 5G smart port system has been implemented to Busan. In order to expand the 5G B2B service market, the Korean government has laid the foundation for non-telecom companies to take the lead in introducing 5G convergence services. First, the private 5G frequency has been distributed in June of 2021. In October, we reduced the review period from 3 months to 1 month. In November, early entry restrictions in a private network business were relaxed. Accordingly, private 5G frequency allocation has been completed for 3 companies, which are Naver Cloud, LG CNS, and SK Network Services. And the project is in progress. Naver Cloud operates an autonomous driving robot. LG CNS plans to implement flexible production systems. SK Network Service also plans to implement autonomous mobile robots and digital twin. The Korean government plans to support the convergence service demonstration project this year by private 5G network operators. A total of 42 companies and institutions participate in this project. You can see the detailed information at GSMA Mobile 360 site. Korea will continue pursuing the establishment of a digital nation. First, by implementing a digital platform government initiative, we intend to provide the public with customized services that take care of themselves based on AI and data and create an innovative ecosystem. Second, Korea will secure world-class AI capabilities and promote AI convergence in all sectors in industry and society. Third, Korea is planning to strengthen the support for creation of early markets for young entrepreneurs. Lastly, we will spread digital by providing vouchers for companies changing to digital. The Korean government will establish and announce its Digital Nation Strategy in 2022 to promote these policies systematically. This brings us to the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Director General. I get the opportunity, so we're just moving here. So now we get to the speech after the opening keynotes, after insights and remarks from our opening speakers, which have really created a great background for our next panel, which is going to bring some of APAC mobile industry icons and two of GSMA's global board members for a fireside chat. So in some sense, the guys joining us, which I'll let Candice introduce, are my bosses. But I'm going to invite Candice Johnson, founding president of the Global Telecom Women's Network, an icon of the satellite industry, founding SES, amongst other many achievements, to the stage to be the moderator for our fireside chat with our operator CEOs. Thank you very much.
Hello. So, I'm very good at these things. There we go. Yes, wonderful. I would like to invite Moon Yuen and Dr. Hans to come and join me at the stage, please. So before we get to truly these two gentlemen who have taken the responsibility of leading, I won't even call them telco operators because they're so much more than that. I would like to just share a couple of personal reflections. In 1992, when the Global Telecom Women's Network got started, it was also the digital revolution. And everybody was talking about convergence. And today, here we are, 30 years later, we have the 5G, and we are talking again about convergence. And it was that convergence that inspired a group of women, there were 5 of us at the time, to come together and to say that our slogan would be the changing culture of communications from generation to generation. And I think, Sulina, I was so impressed by everything that you said. My life, as was mentioned, has primarily been in space, and I'm delighted to see that the mobile community is now embracing satellites. And so, I always told everybody I used satellites to provide universal access, and now I'm using them to provide access to the universe. But now I'm going to say universal, meaningful community connectivity. It's lovely. So, Moon, I do not think that you need to have an introduction here amongst all of these people. You are the leader of a company who is absolutely the envy of every other single country in the world and company, and that is that you have achieved 95% 5G, way ahead of the target, and this is just amazing. Can you share with us in 2 minutes, because I am hoping that we will have some interactivity and some questions, just, what was driving you? What was maybe the challenges, but most importantly, the benefits now of having 95% coverage of 5G?
Thank you, Candice. And Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Singapore for those of you who travel from overseas. I think if I look back the journey of 5G, I think it started with what Dr. Janelle have said. You know, the government, the regulator have to set the stage in policy. And they've decided many years back, I think it's probably roughly 5 years back, and they said, you know, okay, Singapore is going to have 5G, but we're going to have a 5G standalone network. And if I recall back then, many of the operators in the world said, do we really want a standalone network? Because it's so much more costlier to build a 5G standalone network versus an NSA, non-standalone network. But we do know from a technology standpoint that if you do not have a standalone network, you will not be able to fully maximize the benefits of the technology. You know, the good stuff about network slicing, about creating a virtual network, low latency, millions of devices being connected at the same time, high bandwidth, will not be able to bring to bear if you do not deploy a 5G network, standalone network. So the policy has been stated, the regulation is that you have to build a 5G network if you want a license. So in a way, we are forced into it. From an economic standpoint, it doesn't really make sense because there's no use cases. Think about 5 years ago, not now, not some of the examples we're seeing today. So that sort of set a stage of investing ahead with infrastructure. And we have always been leading in the sense of investing ahead for Singtel, right? If you look years back, whether it is on the 2G network, 3G network, 4G network, we have always said we should invest ahead. But in this case, it was really more a decision that was really trying to maximize the benefit of the technology. But of course, having looked back now, that's the right decision. And we accelerated it even further because now we really have new, not just pilot use cases, with real commercial deployment of 5G, which we can talk about more later.
So, you know, I remember having met the French Prime Minister, Raymond Barre, about 5 years before he died. And he was giving a speech like our wonderful senior Minister of State. And he was saying, and this was, I think, about 2000, he said, you know, 20 years ago, 80% of the jobs that exist today did not exist 20 years ago. And, you know, so you do have to believe, you know, it's a little bit about build and they shall come. And all of the new opportunities, all of the new skills, you know, the transformational essence of 5G, which I, as a musician, also get very excited about, because I think that this is really going to lead to so much creativity and inspiration and enabling of individuals to make our world better. So, you know, Dr. Hans and I did say his last name when we were together, and I'll say it again, Dr. Hans Wijaya Surya.
Perfect.
He and I had a great conversation because, you know, Dr. Janil, we right away, we went beyond the infrastructure to say, okay, how are you really going to enable these communities, and what are the results that digitization is going to bring about? And so would you share with us, I love your approach, you know, instead of one nation, Dr. Hans has 11 nations in his group. And I love the approach of having at once, you know, attacked the infrastructure, but also the businesses resulting. So, Dr. Hans.
Yeah, I think, as you said, Axiata operates from Pakistan in the east all the way to Philippines in the west, with Oh, the other way around. Pakistan in the west to Philippines in the east, a mix of infrastructure businesses, digital telcos, converged fixed mobile operators, and also digital businesses in fintech and digital analytics and marketing. So I think something we've realized is we are at the center of the socio-economies in these countries. Developing societies, and there we look at really making personal communications ubiquitous, affordable, available to the population of the country, elevating the contribution of connectivity and digital empowerment to the people. But as we move up the generations of technology, I think we are getting deeper and deeper into the epicenters of the economies themselves, going beyond socioeconomics to economics to industrial empowerment. And the accountability that we then begin to start sharing with the governments and the nations as a whole, the accountability to engender and empower the competitiveness of these countries at their various levels of industrial development. And I think this is the role of telcos going forward. On one hand, it's onerous because you'll be one of the key levers of industrial competitiveness. The competitive advantage of nations will now have a digital or a strong digital component. And as enablers of these founding technologies, the telcos would have a very important role. On the other hand, the flip side of this is that if we do not make this empowerment inclusive, if we don't succeed in preventing what I would call digital divide 4.0, where nations who adopt versus nations who are laggards, individuals who adopt versus the laggards, industries, companies, and governments. The chasm that will be created will be far more incisive than 5 years ago in 4G or 3G. So I think we have a very hot knife in our hands.
Yes, you do. And, you know, we talk about, and at the GTWN, Global Telecom Women's Network, we are launching our digital metamorphosis theme this year. And of course, you know, here we are in this industry where we are enabling digital transformation. But Moon, how is our industry going to evolve to be able to come into this digital metamorphosis?
Sure. Thanks. Well, before that, maybe a bit more comment on what Dr. Hans have said. Yes. I think it's all interrelated, how we evolve. Firstly, if you look at the history of telcos, you know, we've played a very significant role globally in every nation in bringing connectivity to everybody. And it's even more important now when we look at the pace of digitalization and everyone needs to be connected. That's what Selina has said, right? It is how to provide access. That's the basic fundamental infrastructure build. But how telcos are going to be evolving is, you know, I term it from Singtel perspective, from a telco to a techco. It is important because telco is about connectivity. But you can't do connectivity without technology. So we are evolving ourselves to be more embedded into the whole ecosystem that includes how to enable businesses, enterprises, and consumers and communities into the space of technology. So when you deploy an infrastructure like 5G or fiber for that matter, then how do you translate that raw power of connectivity into something that is usable, that is pragmatic, that companies can build on and work on, and people can learn new skills, new jobs developed through that technology and connectivity. So the role we play will be evolving from a telco to a techco, and not forgetting that we still need to provide basic infrastructure. I think that is critical. And if you look at Singtel, you know, we have created our group purpose. We call it Empower Every Generation. And what does that mean? It means different things to different people. Well, in the lens of 5G, we'll say empower all communities, enterprises to take advantage or exploit the technology of 5G to the betterment of the nation, the society. So I think that is important.
I think it's. I think it is very important. I again look a little bit to what Dr. Yaniel and what Sulina said about making certain that we are all in our industry in touch with the stakeholders. You know, so many times we have experienced where, and excuse me, Dr. Yaniel, sometimes the government's got it wrong and said, you know, that this is what you need to build, and of course it wasn't at all what the stakeholders wanted. So just in 2 minutes, because I'm going to get that question from the audience, what are the two of you and your teams, are you interacting with the with the stakeholders literally on the ground to find out what they need and how they need it?
Yeah, I think the word stakeholder is very important here, because as you get into the epicenter of a country's economy, right, and you're a key component or driver of that, then mapping the right stakeholders to the right activities becomes very important. And that is actually the evolution that Moon was talking about, both internally and externally. You start with investors and capital. I believe the infrastructure layers, the asset focus, would necessarily move into the domain of undifferentiated investments. Not investments for differentiation, but different investments for capacity at a national level. So I believe we'll see far more consolidation, shared networks, and also an involvement of the state, of governments, in building this almost utility-like capacity for the private sector and public sector to grow. But on top of that, I think, to Moon's point, telcos will evolve first to being tech providers and platform providers, but also into providing end-to-end services and become talent factories for the region, because talent is going to be really the epicenter of our capabilities and contributions. So having the right investors with the right focus, the right talent in the right place, and building this end-to-end digital ecosystem at speed would lead to national competitive advantage.
Beautiful. Moon.
Well, I think the first stakeholder, obviously, for us would be the government and the regulators. You know, having that strong partnerships and consultation is important. And I will cite an example. You know, when we started with 5G, we created Sentosa as an island for trial, where government and private sector can really try new things on 5G in that small island in Sentosa as an ecosystem, and we built the 5G network there on a standalone basis as a small pilot for the country. Even though Singapore is a small island, Sentosa is even a smaller island. But we could actually experiment there, and we bring on board industry players to really start experimenting. So I think that is a very important stakeholder to bring enterprises together with the right framework. And I think the next stage would be very important to connect the rest of the world up. And I think this is where our role as GSMA board members becomes important, because what we have created, the 5G platform, especially for the enterprise space, needs to be connected up globally, regionally, across all telcos to create a common platform. So I think that would be another set of stakeholders beyond your own country. And this is GSMA's role.
And you know, I'm so glad you're saying this, because I did have a little bit of, shall we say, in German they say, zwei Schwert in meinen Brust, two swords in my breast, because I thought, digital nations, building digital nations. Do we not want to build digital regions? Do we not want to build digital worlds? Do we not want to build a digital universe? And also including then the metaverse, et cetera, which we had a chance to speak about. So we have 1 minute for somebody who wants to have one question to these two excellent leaders. Who is it? I'm going to come down and see you. Put up your hand. Okay, so it's either. Okay. Selena, well, Dr. Yan, would you like to? Oh, yeah.
I said plenty today.
Okay. Okay, so, Selena, here you go. one question or remark.
Where do you see the role of international organizations in your quest? Does it have any bearing at all, the work that we do, perhaps in your commercial ambitions?
Great. So, Moon and then Dr. Hans. Dr. Hans first.
Oh, good.
It's not an easy question. I think from what you have said earlier on, you talk about the lowest denominator, every country lifting. The biggest challenge I see for international organizations like ITU, or even GSMA for the matter that we're in, it is really about trying to work on the lowest denominator. And when you do that, you run the risk of the early adopters, the nations that are ahead, making comments like, it's no longer relevant because we are not waiting for everybody. So I think the challenge is to consolidate and equalize and say, let's run at our own pace, but ensuring we close the gap and leave no one behind.
Yes, I think that is beautiful. Dr. Hans, would you like to say 5 seconds to that?
Okay. Panels like this, we have to say something the other person didn't say. So let me add on the highest common multiple. And that is where I think international organizations, regulatory bodies, best practice thinkers should push the boundary and take regulation, platforming, enablement, and what is possible, the realm of what is possible to the next level. So yes, I fully agree, lowest common denominator and pull everyone along and make it as inclusive as possible. But at the other end, as Dr. Janil mentioned as well, create the platforms, regulation, enablement for the next wave so that there's also a pull as well as a push.
Shall we have a big hand for Moon and Dr. Hans?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.